Thank you, Thales and Savannah. Appreciate that. And we also have on the in the session with us, we have Xuan from Netflix, who is one of the participants in the study as well, one of the authors of the study. So she'll also be fielding questions. Her picture is on the top on the left, if you're looking for her. So one clarification question for all of you, and please, we'd love to have your questions. So if you have questions, you can ask those using the chat function. If you don't see a chat function it would be under participants for you. And you can send your question to all of the panelists. And so let me just start with one clarification question. In your experiment, and then perhaps also in your actual field study with Netflix, did you observe the degree to which people went from, it sounds like they went from watching this short clip, this 30-second or shorter clip, to watching the full trailer, which might be a couple of minutes long. Was that one of the actual shifts that you observed, that they were more likely to go to the longer trailer to view that?
So Savannah, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Sorry, I was on mute just now. When we run the experiment with Netflix, we have 3 conditions. So condition number 1 is they insert a static image of a trailer. And condition number 2 is they insert the optimized, our version of the trailer. And condition number 3 is they use their traditional approach to take the first 19 seconds of the trailer. And we take a look at this measure, the bad player measure, is because it shows whether our trailer will create the right expectation of the video. So as you can imagine, if you watch the trailer, you expect the movie to be like that, then you tend to stay a little bit longer. But then if you watch the short video clip and you see the movie or TV show are totally different, you're not going to watch very long of the full content. So that's where the bad play ratio comes in. And this measurement is to see whether our optimized trailer can create a correct expectation of the movie content.
Great.
Thank you. Let me answer a couple of questions here. Patrick asks, would you clarify if you can optimize all clips with your system, or is this mainly for shortening longer videos? Patrick, this is mainly for shortening longer videos. When you say optimize, there's very different approaches that you can think about that, but this is basically for getting something like an hour-and-a-half movie or 30-minute sitcom and shortening it to the most engaging, impactful forms of content to increase the chance that the user would want to see the full-length content. So that's the algorithm. For other forms of optimization, we might have to tweak the method. And then Tori asks, can this be applied to advertising through 15 and 30-second pre-roll spots? Tori, the answer to that question would be it depends. It depends because if you're thinking only of ad as emotional content, think of a Coca-Cola ad, right? There's very little information on that ad, and there's very little arguments in that ad. It's basically emotional. And Coca-Cola generally creates up to 1-minute ads. If you were to think about that type of content, yes, we think that you can shorten that for 5-10 seconds to increase the emotionality per unit of time. But if you're thinking of an ad that is an insurance ad, is trying to create an argument about why their insurance is better than yours, and would probably not be appropriate because we wouldn't be optimizing on emotional engaging forms of content. So that's the caveat there.
Let me jump in and ask about other kinds of emotion. Your tests were done on comedy, but you could think about, for example, news content where they're often not selling comedy, but they're selling, things that are either of human interest or even things that perhaps are emotionally distressing. And so do you think that your findings will apply or could be applied to non-comedic forms of video?
I can talk a little bit about this. So our content and our algorithm can be applied to a variety of type of videos. And the facial expression software we use is not only able to track your happiness, but also they're able to track a variety of emotion. For example, do you feel sad? Do you feel fear? Do you feel happy? Do you feel disgust? So all kind of emotions can be tracked using that software. And we use comedy as a prototypical case, but then the algorithm itself can be applied to almost all type of videos you're talking about here. For example, like in the news, people can feel very intense emotions of sadness or anger. And that emotion, the moment-to-moment anger or sad, can be used as input of our model.
Yes, with the caveat that as long as the original content, much of the value of the original content is intended to evoke one of these what we call six basic emotions that Savannah talks about. As long as the original content intends to evoke joy, fear, surprise, disgust, anger, or sadness, then the algorithm should work using the face tracking process, which is the key data that we're bringing in to optimize.
And can you spend a little bit of time talking about the facial tracking, the tools that you used? It's actually interesting that both of our papers today use facial recognition and facial tracking software. So it'd be nice if you want to spend a few minutes talking about that with our guests.
Thales, you wanted me to take this question?
Sure, if you want to, Savannah. Be my guest.
Yeah, I can provide a little bit more detail. So we work with this company called Untitled, and they developed this off-the-shelf software where they track your facial muscular movement. And using the facial muscular movement, they identify several probabilities of your face being in certain kind of emotions. For example, you may be in 90% chance of happiness and 1% chance of disgust. That's probably unlikely to happen. But the way they categorize all these emotions is based on multinomial logic. They identify a probability of your face belonging certain emotions.
Mm-hmm. And the name again of the company that you worked with was?
It's called Nviso, N-V-I-S-O.
Okay, perfect.
So just jumping in, there's many of these tools now available, and I think marketers should really take advantage. And Viso is one that does real-time online tracking of facial expressions to get measures of emotions through people's webcams. There are many softwares available, off-the-shelf software that you can buy. And more recently, I've seen even free algorithms for you to just download the package and just turn on your webcam or any camera video feed that you have, point it to a person's face, and start monitoring in real time, moment-to-moment emotions. So basically, their facial expressions will reveal their basic emotions on the order about 10 times per second. Now, just to finalize, there's a few other questions here also that I'm seeing. Scott asks, how did you test that this method is generalizable to other types of videos? So Scott, originally we were working with multiple forms of video, not just comedy movies. We were looking with horror movies, and we were looking at movies that had huge, intense periods that caused disgust and surprise in people. Eventually, we decided to not use it. As the paper went through the review process, it made it cleaner and simpler and streamlined just to focus on one type of content, to just basically show the method at work. But if you contact us, we can talk about other forms of content that we started out working with. And then Riley talks about the concern how a view was determined through Netflix data. Savannah, do you remember how we coded the view?
I can jump in for that question.
Sure.
Yeah, so when we consider a view of a show, we usually define a 1 month period. So this has been verified by all of the past A/B test results. Usually when we observe 1 month, it's usually the result will consistent through 2 months or 6 months. So normally now when we look at A/B test data, we just frame the time is only allowed for 1 month. And yes, some people do just add the show on their list and they can go back to watch later, but the result is usually consistent within the time period.
And by the way, this is Xuan. She works for Netflix and is one of the co-authors of this study, of a paper.
This cutoff period of 1 month, that was 1 month between seeing your shorter video clip and exposure to either the show or the trailer within that, say, 1 month period?
Correct. Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting.
So there are different type of A/B tests that we do that we observe a longer time, that we think that, you know, the treatment is going to have a different effect over a longer time period. But for these type of tests, we usually use a general standard as 1 month.
Interesting. And how is Netflix responding to your results, Xuan?
So this does looks pretty promising, and I think this approach, the scalability part, is very important for us, because right now, like as you probably know, like we get thousands of shows on Netflix, and for some of the product area, we do have like special made trailers, like short clips for some like big shows. But a big concern of us is that we don't have a general approach for, like, you know, all of the rest of the shows. And this approach can actually demonstrate we can do it in a much larger scale for all of the shows, and this process can be automated.
So just to add to that, I do some consulting for YouTube, and clearly YouTube, if you think about YouTube clips, the vast majority of them that are uploaded either professionally or by amateurs, the first 5, 10, 15 seconds of those clips are very uninformative because most of these things build up over time. And so for them, it's very, very important to figure out what images and what short clips to give for users to sample before they decide to commit to watching anything that is longer than 5 or 10 seconds. Mm-hmm. And so this method is also being considered in many other places where the broad idea is to how to provide consumers sampling of the content that eventually they're thinking about whether to view or not.
It might be useful to you know, you have this very nice slide where you show the 4 factors that affect the viewing. Maybe just to revisit those as we approach the end of the webinar, because I think people might be interested to get a refresh on that. And for everyone listening, as we get to that slide, we will make materials, both the webinar content and the slides themselves, available to you. So if you don't worry about scribbling things down as you listen, but maybe just tell us, maybe just revisit these. And I guess when we think about these strategies, you know, what is a practical step that a marketer would take to embed this finding into their next video clip?
Sure. So just to get you an idea, a sense of what the algorithm is doing here that is different from prior approaches, not thinking about the naive approach of getting the first seconds, but if you were to do it yourself, if you have, 2-3 minutes of videos, how do you make the perfect clip to put online in your website? Well, first, you start chopping off the least engaging, least interesting portions of that clip. Instead of starting with the best, we start with the worst and eliminate those. So we start eliminating them because we have a time constraint, what is very important for each of these websites. And in the process of elimination, we're considering a series of things. First, we're considering across a sample of viewers that watched the entire trailer, what is the average of the emotion that they expressed, right? What they felt. What is the increase of this emotion, which is very important. How did they start increasing, feeling more and more, let's say, happiness or surprise or disgust? That's very important. And then the second point is ending strongly is very, very important. So we need to end strongly on an emotional tone, as well as on a more basic feeling that there's something to be gained by watching the full content. And so you want to make longer scenes at the end, and you want to increase the volume because that affects the senses. So that's what the algorithm is kind of figuring it out. And when we look at books or traditional research on how to create engaging content in general, we see some of the parallels that we've identified, that the algorithm identified, to how do you build compelling content.
That's great. And maybe just as we close, is what's next on your agenda? Do you have something interesting that you could preview for those attending, or questions that you're considering, that because there may be companies engaged in the webinar that might want to support your activities? So what's on the agenda? Maybe something you're thinking about.
Well, we, one of the big things is, as the questions are, how generalizable is this? We want to really apply this method in all sorts of different types of content. Now there are video game websites that are creating trailers. Recently, a phenomenon we identified is all of these books that are coming out. Books are being created. They're creating little trailers of books to tell a little story about what the book is. So that's a big marketing tool. We're sure that video content is very important, and video content online has become, the predominant form of communication, and marketers have used this. We want to hear from you. Anybody that has a unique application that you think this might be useful, we'd love you to contact us through email or through the JM.